everyone. To our students, hello. As always, I love seeing you. To any guests that are here, this speaker series is sponsored by the Data Institute, which is the umbrella organization for all data science and data engineering programming that happens here at the university. And today I'm really excited to welcome our speaker. His name is Ben Snider. And Ben is a senior business product manager at Adobe, specializing in hybrid product management solutions. So another cool thing about Ben is if he does a good job today, he's like a best friend of mine. If he does an okay job, I know him like as an acquaintance. So that's no, I'm just kidding. So I'm excited because Ben is a friend of ours, and so he has experience. He's actually worked with my husband, who's also here today, but he has experience in companies like Abnormal Security and Included Health. He's led initiatives in product integration, customer retention, and cross-functional program management. In his talk today, he's going to share insights from his work across those different industries, highlighting roles that extend beyond traditional like data professional paths. So I hope this is an insightful conversation, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz. That's quite the introduction. Hi, everybody. My name is Ben. I really want you to get something out of this talk. I think I built this deck 2 or 3 times. I have way more content than we have time. I really want it to be a Q&A because this could go in a variety of different directions. That's okay. I really want to answer your questions. I want to hear your questions. I did make a slide new. I don't know how you pronounce it. Please log questions there, upvote questions, because I don't think we're going to have enough time for me to get through everything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rip through some of my early career till when I got to the Bay Area and started doing startups, because I think that's more relevant for this group, and started interacting with like data science, data engineering more often. So everybody's got it? I'll throw up the QR code a couple more times. All right. First disclaimer. I use a lot of AI for the clip art image generation here. This is not my art. This was not art downloaded. I always love to see what the prompts give you here. So a lot of the imagery that was output was just I copy-pasted the slide text and just see what it spat out. All right. And I have notes on my phone, so forgive me. I'm going to keep looking at my phone. Let's see. Yep. Okay. Here we go. First disclaimer, I have to be careful. I'm under a lot of NDAs. I know a lot of secrets. There are some things I can't say. I will do my best to answer your question. I do have anecdotes. I have hilarious anecdotes that I do want to share with you. But I may change names. I won't mention certain specifics for a very good reason. But I'd still like to share them with you. Let's see. One personal/professional policy that I have is I do not speak ill of former employers, no matter what. You will not get the dirt from me. I will say throughout my career, I have always left employers in a good place. That's very important to me. I don't just cut and run. If some place isn't working for me anymore, I figure out what that transition plan is. So no dirt from me. Nice try. Let's see. Other disclaimer, everything I say here is my personal opinion. It's not the opinion of my former employers, my current employer, any future employers or employers I may be employed by in other quantum realities, anything like that, nor is it the opinion of this university. So, had to say that. Let's see. I am also not a designer. You will see that from the slides. It's black and white text with some images I spat out, but I did not spend my time there because I want you to hear me. I want to answer your questions. That's where the focus is, and it's more on the content, less on the design. So I'm sorry if there are designers in the room. Some of it's not pretty. All right. Now, I thank Liz for the introduction. I was asked to write a bio and a description for this course. Full disclosure, I let AI write that. I am not a good shameless self-promoter, so I just gave it my LinkedIn profile and a lot of the slide content, and I told it, write this for a sales conference. That's why there's some weird enthusiasm in the description. I just wanted to say that, but thank you, Liz, for the introduction. I think this quote is hilarious, and I'm setting the bar exceedingly low. I do want to share with you some lessons I have learned throughout my professional career. I think they're important. I will try to add as much context as possible. These are the things I like to share. Recently, I've had an uptick in the number of people that are coming, that I've worked with previously, that are looking for coaching, mentoring for me and want to touch base because they're either looking at switching career paths. The market's kind of tough right now in tech, so they want to hear my 2 cents and want some advice. But anything, I'm setting the bar low here. I think, and this person, Mr. Brilliant, if you look him up on Wikipedia, he is quite a character. He has lived in the Bay Area. He makes a lot of these quotes. He's been a cartoonist. He's an interesting person. I hope to meet him one day. Like I said, what I hope you get out of this presentation, I've seen, thank you Liz for sending over some of the recorded sessions. Those were helpful for me to calibrate a little bit. What I want you to get out of this presentation is maybe you're considering large company versus startup. It sounds like a lot of you, everyone here is a graduate student, yes? Thumbs up, yeah. All right, some of you come from undergraduate like data science to graduate data science. I also hear there's a lot of like data engineers, computer science undergraduate coming into data science. Is that right? Do we have anyone else from a different background? Yes. Go ahead.
I did math.
Math. Yes.
We have a number of high school educators.
Educator?
High school educators.
High school educator. All right. Interesting. All right. Like Liz said, I want you to also think, because some of you may leave school and be like, I don't want to do data science, maybe strictly. Maybe I want to entertain some other career paths and things. I'm going to try to give you maybe some alternatives and maybe some role titles you maybe not have heard of before. There are certainly roles I've taken on that I did not know of before. I think that's a failing of my high school guidance counselor or anyone else. I will try to share some of the interesting technologies I've worked with. Working in startup land, you get to work with a lot of cutting edge like technology. Very interesting, and like I said, lessons learned. Please laugh. This is meant to be entertaining. And there are jokes in here, so it is okay to laugh. I expect laughter. The gift box in the lower right-hand corner is, I did bring a couple of incentives. I don't have something for everybody, but we will do something at the end. I do have some incentives, so please have some participation. It's important. So who am I? Well, Ben grew up in Spokane, Washington, east side of the state. He wanted to go to school. And he settled on the Rochester Institute of Technology without ever visiting the campus. The reason I did that is RIT has a huge emphasis. Nearly all their professors have had professional experience prior to working at the school. So I wanted that insight. That was important to me. I switched undergraduate programs many times. It was getting expensive. So I came in as a computer science major. That did not last long. The reason is I just didn't like the theory around computer science. I liked more of the practical application of computer science and software engineering. I switched to information technology, but this was around the 2001 bubble burst. So even though I enjoyed information technology and my focus was on like networking and web technology, I was like, oh man, I don't think I'm gonna be able to get a job. I've already taken on 5 figures of debt here. Maybe it's time to switch into something else. And so I did like biological science in high school, and genetic engineering was really interesting to me. And so I went into bioinformatics because at RIT it was pretty much a 50-50 split between computer science, but more of an emphasis on the application of computer science in the biological sciences and genetic engineering. And that was very interesting. Then I made a mistake, and I'm going to share my mistake. I signed up for a 4+1 graduate program. So essentially, you try to get your undergrad and graduate degree at the same time. And in your final year of undergraduate, they compress the coursework, and then you do one additional year. You still have to do a thesis. I did not complete this. I did all the coursework. 70% of my thesis is done. The problem was my thesis committee fired my biological mathematician and swapped him out due to politics at the school. I'm not going to go into more detail. Trying to explain to a straight-up mathematician all of the things that go into biological systems and all the things you have to consider was too much. Like, I was never going to get there, and I really needed a mathematician to help me with the probability analysis in my paper. So I had to make the decision. It was a win fast, lose fast kind of situation. I was like, I gotta go. I did spend one additional year at the school in a professional staff capacity at Residence Life, trying to wrap it up, but I just couldn't make progress. It cost me $22,000 in additional debt. My recommendation to someone in a similar situation as me is if you are looking to get your graduate degree in the biological sciences, which is not here, make sure you're working at a research school. RIT was not known for like biological research. I would have had more resources there to fall back on. Let's see, lover of pugs. I have my pug for 15 years. He is an old man. We'll probably get another one. I wish I could have 5. But he is old and grumpy, and he's still doing the walks. And I live with my boyfriend in San Francisco. I identify as a gay male with he, him pronouns. And so that's a little about me. So where did I start when I left school? I got a job at Epic in Madison, Wisconsin. Some of you may know them. They're not a household name. They build electronic medical records software. If you've ever used Kaiser in California, you have used their software. Kaiser uses their software. I was hired as a research and developer, aka software engineer, on the System Pulse team. And I'll go into a second what that was. It was not a retail product. It was not something that was sold. It was something you got for free when you bought the enterprise product. And I'll go into that in a second. Now, data science people. The back-end system for this thing was MUMPS. InterSystems Cache is the commercial wrapper around MUMPS. I was more focused on the front end, and they wanted me to start building in Microsoft Silverlight at the time, which was in beta, which was Microsoft's answer to Macromedia Flash. I'm dating myself. And so let me tell you a little bit about system. Well, first MUMPS, and this should send shivers down your spine. Should I be worried?
That's because of
Nope. Okay. Oh, I got it. All right. Be careful, people. MUMPS was released in 1966. It was a back-end system. I'm showing you code up here. These 2 blocks of code do the same thing. It's awful to read. It is awful to troubleshoot. But it is extremely efficient. It is great on disk I/O. There's no declarations, also hard to read, hard to troubleshoot. There are no reserved words. You can use some of the system words without restriction. That causes problems. Essentially, what the back-end system is a post-relational database in kind of a graph format with just nested arrays. Does anyone have a guess why one of the largest electronic medical records companies uses this back-end system when we have all these modern, lovely databases? Anyone want to venture a guess? Yes?
Probably a fear of like losing data.
Fear of losing data, that's a little bit, but there's ways to counteract that. But I like the guess. Who else has? Yes?
Transitions are hard.
Transitions?
Transitions are hard.
Yeah, that's part of it. They started using it. It's actually for 2 primary reasons. One, it is extremely fast. Fast. There are no joints. It's already in a post-relational nested like graph format. The other thing it's really good at is locking. What do you not want in electronic medical records? People clobbering other people's edits or trying to enter information and overwriting, right? That's very dangerous. So it's very good if you imagine like tree-based nodes. It can lock a node and everything underneath it while edits are being made and then release the lock. It's very cool that way. So System Pulse. They signed me up for this product and I was like, what? It's not something they put on their website. It's like the troubleshooting utility you get. It had a dashboard. It was meant for monitoring the system. It monitored everything. The database performance, the disk I/O for both the database, that comes into some of the data replication things. It would look at that. It would look at the application front-end performance to make sure things are displaying correctly in a reasonable amount of time. It would look for locks that are not released within a certain timeout period, because sometimes things just get locked and don't get released. It would also look at all the endpoint clients. You do not want an old Dell tower in an emergency operating room crashing or having slow disk performance or network connectivity issues. That would be bad. But once again, they already had a dashboard system. It was very much a traffic light, hugely dense, because you can imagine all these things, there's thousands of clients, thousands of disks. So many records you have to monitor. It was a very dense dashboard. I can't show it to you, of course, and I didn't save any screenshots from back then. But very traffic light based, and I tried to look for a screenshot from at the time, the Kaiser kind of operations room for it. They had huge flat screen monitors all around that had our dashboards up. And you could quickly eyeball, and it would just show red on something that needed attention. This is how they kept everything up and running. It was very intense. So lessons learned at the time. I did it for about 18 months. And I was like, I'm not a software engineer. I was sitting in a cubicle, and I was trying to get Silverlight to work, and it was still in beta, and it had its own things, and I was like, I'm not getting much value out of this. And it was hard. I didn't have direct lines to customers. It was hard to see what my work was producing in terms of value, what people were getting out of it. I was too far removed. I really liked working with data. You can imagine there was kind of like a controller that would receive all this telemetry from the clients and the database and things and would power the front end. So it was a lot of data connections, data pipelines, things like that. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the data parsing and things like that. And so I was like, okay, something more with data. We can work on that. But once again, I also learned trying to design a front end. I am not a designer. I don't play one on TV. I don't pretend to be one. I'm horrible at it. I love working with designers. They're great. User experience, UI designers are magical. I love getting in debates with them. It's fun. But I'm not a designer, full stop. I will never go back. So left Epic and came out here to California. I had some people I'd met in grad school that were already out here. And I worked for a place called Yardi. Yardi is also not a household name. But is anyone here worked in property management before? Nope. If you worked in property management, it would be a name. They have a huge market share. I still think they own a big slice of the pie out there in the market. It's in Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara's a weird place if you're a young professional, because you have University of California students at one end and the retirees from LA at the other. No one in between. That was interesting. I lived with my friends from grad school in a condo complex. We were by far the youngest people in that condo complex by the lower quartile, for sure. What I did at Yardi, I was a technical account manager, and they had two main pillars. They had residential property management and commercial property management. They put me on commercial, so think high rises, think offices, office parks, think malls, things like that. And my primary responsibility was helping people implement the Yardi software and then ongoing professional services. Now, the cool thing about URD at the time is they were starting to do quote unquote cloud hosting. So the big unique thing about their product was there was no desktop app. You accessed everything through the Microsoft browser at the time, which was very ahead of its time, very cutting edge, because so many property managers were just used, like, similar to Quicken and stuff, they were just used to desktop apps that they would just install. It wasn't ubiquitous. And so having everything through a browser meant they could have more distributed staff. Staff could access it anywhere. Laptops, they didn't have to install it and manage and keep updating that software on those machines. Now, so many stories. Oh man. So the big technologies in play at the time were ASP.NET, which I had worked in before, and Microsoft Transact SQL. And so I do have stories. I will say one. Transact SQL is very important because at its core, Yardi software is just accounting software when you think about it. Property management is very much like an accounting exercise. You're sending out invoices, you're collecting money, you're doing expenses, you're ordering like replacement things and doing accounts payable and things like that. And so they gave us access to the back end. Oh, another one. They gave us access to the back end. We also had access to their installation with ASP.NET. It was a multi-tenant environment, but you could change files and things to change the front end experience. The funny thing is, you either, to be hired on the technical account management team, you either had to have some background in property management, be really good at SQL, or accounting. They kind of like anchored to one of those things and then would do internal training for the other two for the gap filling. So I had the SQL experience. I had no accounting experience, no property management experience. The funny story is occasionally, can you imagine, someone would fat thumb something, or they would forget to put something in their where clause when they're deleting records or upserting records. Yeah.
Drop that table.
So we would be on the floor and you would know when it happened because someone would be like, oh shit, shoot up, and essentially you had about an hour to roll it back before it got kind of permanent, and then they'd have to go to like one of the nightly backups, right? Transact SQL still has limits, right? And so you'd have to go find a manager, or you'd have to go, there was a support desk in the middle of the floor that only those two places had the red phone number to call down to the data center and have them roll it back as quickly as possible. But it was hilarious because it would happen maybe 2 or 3 times a month when I was working. So it's like, be careful. We all know this as like data professionals, data scientists. Be careful when you're working in production, right? What did I do a lot? Data forensics. Yes, I did encounter fraud. I had a book of business. I would do a lot of troubleshooting. I would do a lot of financial reporting troubleshooting. I'll get to lessons learned in a minute. They also learned pretty quickly, there was an India-based engineering team, so most of the time if you wanted any changes to like the layout of reports or how a report was generated or wanted a customization on the front end, you had to create a ticket, describe what you want, attach the files, send it to India, wait at least 24 hours for them to cycle through India time, send it back to you, load the file, you test it, get back to the customer. My customers learned very quickly, I can make those changes myself. We don't have to wait for 24 hours or keep going back and forth. I could do it with them on the phone very quickly, and we could test in semi-real time. So I got a little popular. The problem also, I put the mention of full migrations to here. Our recommendation for the implementation is if you're on old property management accounting software, close the books at the end of the month, then cut over to the new Yardi software. We'll load all the status of all your financial accounts at that time, and you would move forward with the Yardi software. This meant you just back up your old financials on the old platform, but then some large customers would demand a full data migration, and nothing made me groan harder than that. Because I had one data engineer who would help me, well, he would do the preliminary like data porting and mapping from whatever the old software was into the Yardi schema. Then it was my responsibility to troubleshoot with the customer their financial reports, figure out what went wrong. They never added up. They never added up. And then figuring out where 10 cents went. That was super fun for me. And let's see how we're doing on time. Oh man, I gotta book it. Okay, lessons. The delete button, I tell this people who haven't worked in tech, delete doesn't really mean delete. Delete means soft delete, right? The data still persists, you just can't see it. This was also an inflection point in my career. I enjoyed what I was doing. I got to mix my technical skills and background. I got to talk with customers, solve their problems. That felt good every day. I loved when customers loved me back and said, we're not doing this unless we can talk with Ben. That felt good. And I also saw the trend. The Yardi software at the time was starting to put in more automations. I helped customers implement features that automated people out of jobs. They told me. I worked with some large commercial property managers down in LA. He straight up told me, he's like, you helped me do the automated, I just helped him set out the automated, it would just email people their rent kind of invoice for the month. He's like, I fired 2 people. We don't need people printing things and putting things in envelopes and then addressing them. He's like, you solved that for us. They were also working on some other automation technologies, and I can only imagine they've only gotten better. So what did I see? Software was going to continue to automate people out of a job. This also told me I needed to acquire more skills in my career. Those things are durable. I can take them with me. Also, I became a subject matter expert on a small feature in this enterprise software, and this is what I recommend to people in their career. Find something, especially if you're working in a huge product, or a huge product suite, go find something small that looks like it hasn't been taken well care of. Learn everything you can about it and become that subject matter expert. This is how you get visibility, because some customers are going to ask about it. They're going to call on you, and if people don't see it, it's not a big feature, it's something small, you will just become well known for knowing that thing very deeply. I also realized in my career I wanted more impact. I went from Epic, which was thousands of employees global. Yardi did have a multinational presence, but it was much smaller. I think it was only a couple thousand at the time. I liked being at a smaller company. I was not a small cog in a giant machine, but I wanted smaller companies still. It was like I wanted to be able to make decisions. I wanted to feel the impact and the value of my work. So what did I do? All right, went to the Bay Area. All right, here's where stuff gets interesting, and please start logging questions. This is where things get spicy. I went to Telpart, and this is where I met Sherwin. I joined as a technical solutions engineer. I had no idea this role existed, so it was a surprise to find it. I loved it. It was a blend of working with customer-facing teams and engineering, and got to work with data, you got to work with software, you got to work with code. You're essentially a problem solver, day in, day out. Our CEO likes to call me engineering glue, because I just filled gaps and helped translate requirements and things, and kind of bridged a lot of the communication. I was originally tasked with just onboarding new customers, which meant implementing JavaScript tags, and this was for online e-commerce retail customers. So we would implement JavaScript tags across their site on every single page, and they would send us, and those would send us data. We would collect everything we possibly could. We would know the pages you're on, whether it's a product page, a product category page, a checkout page, your receipt conversion page, if it's the home page, if it's the contact us. We had very, very good independent user tracking, and I'll get to that in a second. But I got more curious because the customer implementations were, sometimes they'd be like 3 or 4 at a time, but other times I'm waiting for one, waiting for sales to close a deal. There's not much I can do. So what else am I going to look at? So I started playing with Hadoop and started looking at the data we were collecting, getting more familiar about what we store. where it is, could I join things, I would start asking myself random questions and see if I could query the data to figure out the answer. I was also kind of the unofficial data scientist supporting the business side. Shorin can attest to this. I would get requests all the time from the account executives because they're like, hey, can you just think of some insights or just some things we can put in like a QBR deck that they may not know. Like we got to sprinkle some stuff in with just the reporting numbers and how much they spent and what the program performance is, but is there anything else we can add on top? Technology-wise, we worked with the real-time bidding networks. So when a user lands on a page, let's say it's weather.com and there's ad slots, the ad networks, if you're subscribed to the real-time bidding networks, they send a request to you. They're like, we have user XYZ. How much do you want to pay to put an ad in front of this person? It's a second price auction. You only have 40 milliseconds to make a decision. The stopwatch is actually 100 milliseconds from the server side, but why do you only have 40 milliseconds to make a decision? Does anyone have a guess? Yes? Average human reaction time? Not necessarily, because the user's already on the page and it's starting to load. The ad slot is essentially blank for a period in time while it's making the decision who wins that slot. The reason server side is 100 milliseconds, but you only have 40, is on the wire time. You have to take into account the request over the internet, which is unpredictable. And so we allocated about 20 to 30 milliseconds each direction. So you only have 40 milliseconds to make a decision. Now most ad tech places at the time would just do static bids, right? 40 milliseconds is not a lot of time. And so they would do a lot of static bidding. So they're like, oh, we pre-classify users into one of 3 buckets. We'll bid high, medium, low. That's it. So you only have to figure out which bucket you're responding to. The telepart system was a lot more complex. We had a ML model that took into all the data from the JavaScript tags and also all the secondary information we were receiving from the ad networks. And we were starting to predict how valuable you were and how likely you were to click our ads and then buy something on the site. This means we had to retrieve data on how many pages you visited, how many products did you view, is there something in your cart where you're close to conversion? That would make the price go up, we'd get more competitive. It was very fast, we were using some state-of-the-art streaming data technology. It was very sophisticated at the time. We still had to do a lot of batch processing at night for a lot of the reporting, and that was very intense, it took hours. But real-time bidding networks, there's a blog post on AWS from long ago. We also, Telepart was one of the first companies to figure out how to use reserve versus spot instances to cut infrastructure costs, which is very interesting. The ads were also dynamic. So once we won the slot, what we put in there were just product slots. We had another model and another rules-based system that would figure out, okay, what things do I put in there to increase the likelihood the user's going to click something? It was mostly the products you had previously viewed, but we would also do some dynamic things to keep it fresh, so to combat the banner blindness. They open source GTFO. We can talk about this one later if anyone has any questions. This goes to cloud infrastructure and how you can quickly just turn over instances. It was tough back then. And we had a very sophisticated graph-based identity network, and I can talk about that later. The other thing that was novel is Telepart put its money where its mouth is. Most ad tech companies would either charge you on a per-click basis or on a CPM basis, like how many impressions, per 1,000 impressions, how much are you willing to pay? Telepart did it differently, and this was a struggle trying to sell to customers. We build on a click conversion model, and we take a revenue share of that order. So if a user clicked one of our ads and then converted within, it was like roughly 30 days and bought something, we would take a percentage of that order. Now, we didn't charge for view-through impressions, people that didn't click our ads but converted anyway. So we had to run an A/B study to actually prove out the value of our program. It was completely new, completely different. This was the uphill battle with a lot of customers because they were like, we've never purchased stuff like this. what do you mean you're gonna take like maybe 10% rev share of orders? And we're like, no, the ones we directly, causally click and then convert, you're getting a lot of stuff for free. And so what we had to do is convince them to run a 90-day pilot with us initially to collect enough data to run an A/B test and get statistical significance so that we could prove it out to them. It was an uphill battle, but we did change hearts and minds. It was very, very interesting. Data science all day long, oh my goodness. Real-time data streaming, like I said, let's see, log data, Hadoop, that was me. Anomaly reporting was hard, garbage in, garbage out. I was responsible for all the data that came into the system, so I was sanity checking stuff on daily, if not weekly, to make sure it was high quality. Otherwise, the ML models are no good, and we'd have to retrain. I have a personal grudge against Hadoop version 0.91 that we were stuck on for the longest time. Let me share. Does anyone else have a personal vendetta against Hadoop? No? Oh, yes? A little bit?
Yeah.
Here was mine. Back in 0.91, we had a lot of serialized objects that stored multi-dimensional data that you could query through Hadoop. The problem with Hadoop 0.91 and earlier is if your queries got too big and you're trying to do joins that are too large and data starts paging to disk because you're out of RAM, the serialized objects get paged to disk, and then when the Hadoop tries to read them back into memory, it would fail. So what did I have to do? Nothing short of SQL gymnastics. I would have to find ways of minimizing the memory load and things. I would have to do multiple attempts to get data out of the system. I would beg engineers to spin up more instances. I was like, I need more memory, need more memory. They're like, we're not giving you like gigabytes of memory. It's getting too expensive. So nothing short of SQL gymnastics. Other things I did, I built RoboBadger. Sherwin, do you remember RoboBadger? Yes. I was getting too many questions from the account executives. They're like, hey, is our tag on this page and what data is it sending? And I'd have to like look at the browser console and stuff, and I tried to teach them multiple times, they just weren't technical enough. So in a couple weekends, I built a Chrome extension that they could just click, and it would tell them, here's the data that got sent to Telepart servers, and then it would also tell them when we dropped ad network cookies, so they could confirm that we were actually dropping and had the opportunity with the ad networks to get ads in front of those users. I also had the problem with a very large customer, because we also ingested product feeds. So, and we pre-processed those for putting the products in the ad slots. The problem is, who wants to guess which performed better? There's such a thing as lifestyle imagery. So think it's like a picture of a beautiful living room. Think Williams-Sonoma. There's a throw, there's a couch, there's throw pillows, there's a coffee table. And then you have standalone catalog imagery, which is like, it's just the boot on a white neutral background. Which one had the higher click-through rate? Lifestyle? Anyone else want to guess differently?
Das Boot.
Das Boot?
The boot.
It was actually the boot.
Yeah, boot.
It's actually the boot by a wide margin. The best thing was if you could have a white background. Does anyone have a guess why white backgrounds with products worked so much better? Yeah, I think I heard it. It blends in with the web page. It makes it look like it's embedded content. So think of all the blogs you read, and there's kind of like an ad that comes into the side of all the copy. It would look like it's natively a part of the page. It doesn't look like an ad. Now, you would think multi-million-dollar companies with very large engineering teams would be able to provide a product feed in a CSV or XML format that would be able to determine what the image is. Like, are they meta labeling like all the imagery? Could they filter it out? Nope. I get feeds with products from like 10 years ago stuck in them. They wouldn't even know. They're just like, here's the product feed we send to all our other ad partners. You just got to deal with it. And so we had a very large customer, and the problem is the lifestyle imagery. We were in head-to-heads a lot. And so any kind of things we could do to gain an edge in those head-to-heads with other vendors, we would take it. And so I spent, it was two or three nights developing a heuristic. And essentially what I did is I looked at the corners. I would download all the product imagery. I built this in Python. It would look at the corners, like kind of postage stamp wise. Look at the RGB values of like a 3x3 pixel thing. Average the RGB values. If it was in a margin of error of a neutral white background, I'd keep the image. If it wasn't, because usually lifestyle imagery was more complex, had colors, non-white backgrounds, it would throw it away. I used this to pre-process the product feeds locally on my laptop for a few times just so that we could prove out the higher click-through rate. Once it did, I handed off my code to the engineers so that they could productionalize it. And we for sure won that account. The performance difference was significant. All right, quick lessons. Man, I'm gonna rip through these. Okay, the battle for a large account. I have a good anecdote here if anyone wants to hear it, but you'll have to ask for it. This was a funny one. Counterintuitively, owning your mistakes makes other people respect you more. Early when I joined Telepart, I was employee number 18. I made a slight error. I made a JIRA ticket for an engineer to implement a URL, and I wasn't super precise on one of the URL parameters, so I understood why the engineer misinterpreted what I said. I wasn't super prescriptive. As a result, the customer could not track the clicks that we were driving to those pages because the URL parameter was missing. I got chewed out on the phone. That's okay. I won her back. She sent, when she finally left the company, like 4 years later, she sent me a thank you card. So I will claw it back. And so I made a mistake. I ate the mistake. I got up in front of the company. I will not throw a coworker like that under the bus. I got up in front of the company, all 17 other people, including the CEO, and I said, I am sorry. This was my mistake. Here's what I did. Here's how I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen again. Counterintuitively, that earns you more respect longer term. And eat your mistakes, right? It shows that people can trust you and your judgment. Never tell a CEO that you have worked in IT in any capacity. I'm warning you now. I got stuck with IT work forever. I was in charge of the Wi-Fi. I was in charge of provisioning new laptops. There were moments in time where I was stringing fiber optic cable through our new office building as a side hustle. I was not compensated for that work. Never tell a CEO you know IT stuff. But it did narrow my career path quite significantly. I was like, man, this is resonating with me. I am closer to the code. I am closer to the data. I am solving problems every day. It is super cross-functional. I love it. There is something different every day. There is a new problem to solve. I'm excited to come to work because it's just different. I just don't know what next week's gonna bring. People loved working with me. I loved working with them. It was an amazing experience. I would not trade it for the world. I was there for about 4 years. They did have a successful exit. They were acquired by Twitter in 2015. I would say this though, most startups fail. We all know this. I hope you know this. Please, if you're going to join a startup, do it for the right reasons. Assume it will fail. It's not going to be the payout that everybody wants. It's not going to be the next, everybody thinks they're the next Uber. Everybody thinks they're going to make the millions of dollars from their equity. I'm telling you right now, it's probably not going to happen. So I hope you're in it for other reasons. I was in it because I was intellectually curious. I wanted the challenge and I wanted to learn new skills. That's why I went there. I will tell you another anecdote if you guys put it in the slideo. I will tell you about the acquisition talk I had with my manager at the time, the CTO. It was a weird one. And then the 3 functions of professional success reign true for me. This is another thing I learned during my role. I'm going to open this up because I think it's important. What are the 3 things, this is my personal opinion, if I were to ask you, everybody, there's no right answer here. What are the 3 things that you think would greatly increase your chances of professional growth and success? I think it's just 3 things. Yes?
Good mentorship.
Good mentorship? That's a good one. It's not on my list though. It's a good one. Anybody else have any guesses? Yes?
Communication.
Communication? Yes. Yes. I like that one. Yes?
Network.
Network? Yes. Yes?
Learning.
Learning? Yes. Okay. Of all those, it's kind of hit 2 for me. Here are my 3. 1, learning. Yes, absolutely. If you're not keeping up with the latest and greatest, you're going to fall behind. All right? Especially in tech, especially in data science, things are changing all the time. You have to stay abreast of what's changing. 2, yes, absolutely, strong relationships. This is why I never speak ill of former employers. I always leave on good terms. I will never speak ill of a colleague. I really try to minimize. I know at some companies it's cute and quiche to talk about other people behind their back. I know there are toxic workplaces out there. That's why I always look before I leap to my next role. I always check the culture. I like to see who I'd be like working with to kind of get a litmus test on that. The third thing is results. So you have to produce, right? And you have to produce good work. But if you hit those 3 things, strong relationships, learning, and results, I think that increases your chances greatly in terms of professional career growth. Come debate me after if you have a different point of view. All right, so we went to Twitter. It's 2015. Dick Costello was on his way out. Jack Dorsey was back in kind of a 50-50 capacity because he had another company going on at the time. Twitter at the time was playing catch up with Facebook. Facebook dynamic ads and things were just eating the market alive. Twitter wanted to get in on the performance ad space, and Telepart was a big part of that because they wanted some of our core technologies and they wanted to bring them into their tech stack. Twitter was also at this time figuring out what it was. I laughed to myself. I laughed. Twitter didn't know what it was. And they said this at all hands meetings at the time. They're like, is it a micro-blogging platform? Is it a public soapbox service? Is it, I don't know, email chains from your grandma in real time? They just didn't know, and they were doing a bunch of market research at the time to figure out what do they tell people, what is Twitter? People were using it for a variety of different purposes. And not everybody was using it to publish their thoughts and feelings. So many users were just consuming without posting. Eventually their motto became, it's what's happening, because it was meant to be like real-time information streamed to your mobile device. It's how you kept up with the latest and greatest. Everything was kind of like reverse chronological. You didn't have to wait. You could. I loved Twitter at this time. I watched like journalists, celebrities. You got to hear directly from them. You didn't have to wait for the press or anything. Nothing was filtered. It was great. This is also when they did their NFL streaming test, which is very interesting. I was on site in headquarters when they had the launch party. That will remain in my memory for a while. Brands were also paying a huge sum of money to access the Twitter data pipe. It was expensive to license, but airlines, if anyone remembers like Delta and stuff back in the day, you would get a faster support response if you just went at them through Twitter and they'd slide into your DMs and try to solve your, like, if you missed your flight. It was faster than calling them or emailing them. It was great. I continued to support the Telepart business for 2 years in-house. It kept making money, unfortunately, and I could not move on. Sherwin and I, it was a skeleton crew, to say the least, but it kept making money. Towards the end, like 2.5, 3 years mark, I took over the Twitter Ads API partner engineering team. Merged my existing team because then we were shutting down the Telepart infrastructure. I wanted them to have a seat at Twitter if they wanted to stay, and I wanted to make sure they had like a home. Otherwise, they were just going to shut down the Telepart business, and there was no manager for the Twitter Ads API at the time. So I took that over, and I kind of shored up that team for a bit. Lessons, Twitter was huge at that time. Huge. Like just the sheer number of people, number of functions, it was multinational. They had offices all the way around the world. I wasn't technically in product, but I was consulted a lot because I knew all the data collection, especially for the performance ads folks. Did a lot of Twitter ads support. The support team would escalate some things, especially for the large accounts, things like Apple and stuff that are spending a lot of money. Sales pulled me into customer conversations regularly. I also launched V2 of the Twitter Ads API at the time. I was the subject matter expert also for any cookie split traffic tests. So if Twitter ads was trying to do something against Facebook, they'd come consult with me on how to structure those tests so it was fair. I have the artifact. Right here. I will show a screenshot of it in just a second. I love the artifact. I also built V1 of the Twitter pixel helper with one other engineer. We did it in a day, and we published it to the Chrome extension store. Ridiculous. And I did have material interactions with the 2016 election. We can talk about that later. Why I left Twitter, I wanted to be a decision maker. I knew in order to do that, I would have to go back to a much smaller company, and I was like, I can go do another startup, so let me go find another startup. Here's the artifact. Quick anecdote. The Twitter universal website tag, that's what this is referencing. Now, some of you may think in product and engineering world, especially if you're releasing something that big, there's a lot of fanfare, there's gotta be a situation room, there's a lot of, I don't know, whatever. I was in another conference room talking about something else. There was about 8 of us in the room. The engineer was at the far end of the long table. He's like, can you slide this Post-it down to Ben? And that's the purple Post-it, and I'll read it out loud. He says, Ben, quick question for you, universal website tag. We defined the TWPV function. This is equivalent to Facebook's FBQ and Ghost Analytics GAQ function. Any thoughts on the TWPV name before it goes live? Forever. Because once we publish this, there's no takesies backsies, because people are going to put it on their website. It's going to start sending data to our front-end servers. We can't change the function names or anything. It would break stuff. So this was the once-in-the-moment thing. So my response is the yellow Post-it behind it that I slid back down the table. I was like, listen, okay, let's think about this rationally. One, let's reduce the character count to minimize typos, probably, and the size of the data being exchanged. So that means 3 character name, and I went down all the permutations, and I was like, TPV, don't reuse it, we use that for something else internally, people get confused. TWE looks like tweet, people are gonna get confused, this is ads, not Twitter tweets. TPQ, P and Q are hard to discern as different in some typefaces, let's not do that. TWQ, that's my vote, +1. TWPV, 4 character, I don't like it. P and V, I forget what it says on the back. So I saved this, because this was a huge impact moment for me. I love reminiscing about it, and it happened between me and an engineer, and we made a decision that materially affected thousands of people. This was also, I looked up, I was like, I wonder if that Twitter pixel helper is still in the Chrome store. It sure is. It has 60,000 users on it. They've rebranded it, of course, but I'm glad to see it still lives on. That's great to feel. I'm going to skip questions because I have just a few more things on content, and then we have a lot of time, I think, at the end. Oh, good. We have questions. I ran to Envoy. Company had a recent funding round, new leadership, and was going through a huge inflection point in growth. This was their moment. I had a decision to make. Did I want to be pre-sales or post-sales? I am not a designer. I am not a salesperson either. I don't have that gene. Sometimes I put on the hat of a sales engineer, Sherwin can attest, but I am not a salesperson per se. So I wanted to be on the post-sale side, on the customer support, CSM side of things. They hired me as the director of success. I reported to the chief revenue officer, who, this was the selling point for me, because I was like, once again, risky startup, what am I gonna get out of it? His name was Russ Thau. He was the person that helped with, he was there in the early days of Intercom, that chat thing you see on a lot of websites. He built out like their global worldwide sales motion. And so they expanded, he wanted to go back to a smaller company. I was like, I can learn a lot from this person and how to scale things effectively. He was great, he gave me wide berth to pretty much do whatever I wanted. The challenge was also appealing. I pretty much just worked in software exclusively up until this point. Envoy, you'll know them as their iPad sign-in thing for a lot of companies in the offices. They also have other products. It was a mix of hardware and software. I thought that was going to be unique and kind of interesting. I also got to build an org from scratch that would do worldwide support. We were also seeing a shift in how businesses were approaching physical security, IT, and on-site services. It was coming under an umbrella called workplace services. I see that more and more now. We were at the beginning of that trend, and the market needed some disruption. for sure. It's just basic record keeping for a lot of it, right? So many front desks, security desks still ask you to sign in on a piece of paper. They photocopy it, they put it in a filing cabinet. Why are you doing that? Then if you have to like look up, did someone from another competitor come to our office and look over someone's shoulder? You gotta make it easier to look up whether someone brought in a friend they should not have or gave them access to things they should not have. We were also getting into the space, we got to test a lot of sensors and hardware locks and things. It was a fun time, I can share anecdotes later. Guest orchestration was also a thing we were working on. What is the guest experience when you come to an office? Do you automatically get guest Wi-Fi credentials texted to you? Do you get a welcome email? With the conference room displays on the outside flash a specific color for you to help you identify the conference room you're expected in? We were trying to orchestrate and starting to, we could see like a lot of that like cross device orchestration was going to be magical. My org was very data driven. I sent some people to SQL boot camp for sure, because I said you should know how to query a database. That is just base technology skills. I adopted Retool, if some of you are familiar. Yes, 4 minutes? Oh, man. Adopted Retool for support teams, which is a low-code application platform. They built their own tools with just pure SQL. It was amazing what they did. It was hands-off. They were building their own support tooling, and they would give me demos every so often. It was amazing. My churn rate was exceedingly small. I was very data-driven. I nudged people. I had high expectations. I watched people's stats. I made sure it was clear where they, let them monitor their own stats as well so that they could course correct. If anybody wants to fight me on the mat, Net Promoter Score versus CSAT, I will be here after the talk. I think people misinterpret what NPS is. That's the thing you always get that says, would you recommend this software to somewhere else on a scale of 1 to 10? It gets misinterpreted all the time. I've gotten into debates on this. I also, continuing with the tech stuff, I love the Philips Hue LED lights because they have a gateway and an API interface. I connected them to our support tooling, so when I'm on the general floor, I could look across the room, I replaced the bulbs in some of our hanging lights above my desk, and they would change color to tell me the cue pressure on our support tools, so I could see it across the room without logging into the dashboards and stuff. That was cool. Lessons, I had the opportunity, Russ, to learn from one of the best, but I also, at this time, I was given the opportunity to move to somewhere else. So I had to make a decision. It was a tough one. It was more than one night staring at the ceiling, figuring out what I'm going to do. Eventually I did change. I went to Grand Rounds. This was a telemedicine company. I joined in June 2019. I reported directly to the CTO. At the time, I was the only program manager in the engineering, product, and design org. I had worked with the director of data science and machine learning before, so there were some familiar faces. Hard problems in healthcare to solve. Few easy wins. Restricted data. You cannot move fast and break things. You could kill people, right? You don't want to do that. Messy data. Messy data. Opportunities, there's tons of opportunity to mine for insights and things. We also hit the complexity from the patient. We didn't want them to have to deal with the nitty-gritty stuff. That was one of the tenets of our product. We also, for employers that are self-insured, we wanted to bend the cost of healthcare. We wanted to intercept people in the right moments in their healthcare journey to get them to the right people without unnecessary cost. Tons of projects I was working on. Lessons learned. Don't work for a telemedicine company during a global pandemic. It was uniquely stressful. I had access to data. I was seeing real-time data of people dying in real time. And for as stressful as the pandemic was, and I know it was a stressful time for everybody, it was just unique to have my face pressed up against the glass. I will say that. I did do things. I know they had material impact on people's positive health outcomes. That was the value and the impact I got from it. I did horrible things to make sure people got the right health care. No regrets. I decided to move on. I really wanted to be a product manager, so I decided to move on to cybersecurity. I knew someone I had previously worked with, started their own company. He tapped me on the shoulder. They had a problem. They hired me as a technical product manager out of the gate. It was a unique problem. They needed me to build a data platform in 6 months. Oh boy. Data platform to power their next generation of products, and it had to be ready in 6 months for RSA 2023. I took on the challenge. It was just me and one dedicated engineer. We did it. It took a lot. 30 seconds?
30
30.
seconds.
Okay. Okay. So what's Ben doing at Adobe? There's a reason I don't put this on my LinkedIn profile. I work in the Adobe Genuine team. They're responsible for anti-fraud, anti-piracy. This is why I am not specific on my LinkedIn profile. I am the senior business product manager. I am the only product manager on the business side. I have 13 stakeholders. It is true. It's a tough gig, y'all. And I can share some things. I'm very restricted on what I cannot share, so I expect questions. It is a wonderful game of cat and mouse. People are always attacking the software, trying to use it for free. I pulled this image from Reddit. This is me. If you try to use pirated Adobe software, we will find out about it. And then I will send you a notification. And then if you do not buy the software after a period of time, I'm going to shut it down. So I'll start terminating the app so you cannot use it. You can find more examples in social media channels about how people do this. I'm coming for you. Okay, I'm done, Liz. Questions? Let me go to the slide view first. People have been upvoting. Okay, let's see. What are the differences between a program and product manager? It will get blurry, I think, especially in the role that I am. There's definitely a program manager aspect to it because I have to make sure the things I am asking for get executed on. And so my strong thesis is as a product manager, you're not done just when you send a product requirements doc and kick it over the fence to engineering and say, build that. You have to make sure it gets built in the right way. Engineering will come back to you and say some things are easy, some things are hard. You need to be able to have the terminology and be able to have a conversation with them on what corners to cut to get an MVP out the door. And how are you going to measure it? How are you going to make a decision? Be transparent on what's the criteria that says we're going to continue to invest in this thing, or no, doesn't work as expected, we're going to park it for now, we may come back to it later. I think there's another question in between the lines here on the difference between project management, program management, and there's a thing called portfolio management. My definition, project management, that's the easiest one. That's where you're managing a product, but you own all the resources. It's usually within a single team, right? It's easier to make prioritization decisions. Program management is managing projects across different teams, each having their own independent priorities. So you have to win hearts and minds and help prioritize your things and make sure they don't slide down the list. How do you get your stuff still built because you need things from them? And then portfolio management is that true top, probably closer to the executive level of managing multiple programs across like multiple orgs and things. I hope that answers your question. How many books do you have? Just one. I wish I had more. I think the official definition is 3 or more pugs is a grumble. I would love to have a grumble at some point. Let's see. What are some Gen AI tools that have come out within the last 5 years that have drastically changed your PM workflow? I am trying to use the AI tools. I do pay for OpenAI. Like I said at the start, I did use OpenAI to write my bio and to make the description for this course. I've used it for other things. It's okay. Nobody has nailed this yet. It's unpredictable. Yes, it's a tool. No, it is not sentient. No, it is not going to suddenly take over every technology system in the globe and turn into Skynet and Terminator. It's a tool. It's a very raw tool. It needs refinement. Now, my personal thing is AI works best when the domain is much, much more narrow. so that the user, the disconnect we have right now is the user puts a prompt into the system or describes something they want, but what comes out the other end is not what they expected. It didn't hit their expectations. Now, I think there's a ton of opportunity here. There's already progress being made to have like additional refinement on what the output looks like looking back more historically on what the user has requested, finding more ways of getting feedback into that system so the output gets closer and closer. But I'm trying to see, other AI tools, we do use them in-house. Acrobat, Adobe Acrobat came out with AI tools. It's very, very good, especially if you throw a bunch of PDFs at it and you're like, summarize this for me, because just synthesizing information is really good at. Other stuff, not so much. And so the other thing I did, I gave OpenAI to my mom because it's sometimes fun to watch my mom. I have my mom use all the products of all the companies I've ever worked at. She is my guinea pig. And so I did get her an OpenAI account, and I ask her every so often, I was like, how are you using this? And it's very interesting. She's like, I took a picture of a plant and asked it what it was. Or she's like, there was a statue downtown, and I couldn't read the plaque, and so I took a picture and told it was like in Spokane, Washington. And of course, that's enough information for it to narrow it down and then read back to her out loud like what it is. So it's like interesting. There's applications here. They're not advertising it quite yet because the tool refinement still needs to happen. Tell us about the acquisition talk. Which acquisition talk? The CTO? Oh, the acquisition talk, yes. All right, here's another lesson learned. I joined Telepart, the first startup. I didn't know what equity was. I didn't know how to value it. They put a number in my offer letter, and I was like, sure. I don't know how to value that. Also, fair game, when I moved up here for the first startup, I was poor as hell. And so very much strict budgeting, lived in the tender knob, folks. And so took those risks because it was something I wanted to do, and I made peace of it with myself, like, hey, it's gonna be a little rough here, but let's see what happens. This is what I want to do in my professional career. And so the moment came during the acquisition, the CTO at the time, Wade Chambers, he was having one-on-ones with everybody to go over all the equity that had piled up over the years. And yes, I did get refresh grants and things, but once again, I was not keeping tabs on it. I had no clue how many shares I had. I didn't know how to value it. That is a miss on my part. It was because at the time, I just loved my job so much, and I was there for the intellectual curiosity, and loved having something different to work on every day. I didn't really care. I was fine with the salary, in all honesty. I thought everything else was just frosting on top of the cake. So I didn't, during my performance reviews and stuff, I didn't push for more equity. That was probably a mistake. I probably should have gotten more. Learned my lesson, for sure. But I went into that conversation with Wade. He sat down and so he's like, Ben Snider, so you've been here 4 years. He goes, do you know what your equity is worth? And I was like, Wade, I have no idea how much equity I even have. And he's like, well, it's gonna be a good day for you. Because for the acquisition, the Telepart shares for the most part were converted into Twitter public shares and had real value immediately. So he's like, here's what that means to you. Now, I will tell you, money may not fix everything. It fixes a lot of stuff, though. Fixes a lot of stuff. It did two big things for me, and I will share that with you. One, I got rid of all my education debt. I also had a little bit of consumer credit card debt. I just wiped the slate clean. Now, I cannot tell you how good that feels. I remember the day, I remember when I hit submit on that form where they're like, okay, you're gonna do an electronic check to pay off the remaining balance of all your education loans, and your balance will be 0, we're gonna close your account. I got the confirmation, and I just sat there for a second, because I was like, I've been paying interest on this thing for so long. And then I'm like, now that money's free, and I can do other things with it. It was such a relief, the burden was gone. I will also tell you something else. There were a couple things that happened in my family that were not good. It was timed nearly perfectly. I got to do some amazing things for my family at the time. I am super, super, super grateful. Gratitude left and right, up and down. I'll just summarize it for you. I saved the house, okay? I would not give up my experience for anything else in the world. Some people look at me and they're like, you mean you blew all your money on doing stuff for your family? I was like, yes, that is important to me. Everyone has different priorities. That was important to me. I have no regrets. Life is about minimizing regrets. All right. Yeah. One more question. Can you talk? I'm just going to take the ones that were uploaded. Can you talk about the 2016 election stuff? Yes, I will talk about this. This was at Twitter. Twitter, for the run-up to the 2016 election was nuts at Twitter. Twitter was a big part of the 2016 election, right? Trump was on Twitter. That was a big thing for people to hear from Trump at the time. And so my team owned like the performance ads business, and I got a tap on the shoulder that the campaign at the time, the Trump campaign, wanted to spend a non-trivial amount of money on Twitter ads. Now, I will tell you, I can divorce my personal opinion, my personal things from work and whatnot. So it's like, hey, it's above board. Anybody can buy ads on Twitter. There are policy guidelines. I will support this. I also want their money, so I'm going to do it. So I got on the phone with the person who was managing the website tags for the Trump campaign shop, of all places, where he was selling merch. And they were like, the thing that will unblock our spend is we need to be able to show that the Twitter ads are driving sales on the Trump shop page. The person I was talking to was a lawyer. The lawyer he was like, I don't know what to do. He goes, I'm trying to get the Twitter universal website tag on here. It's not working. The reporting's not working. He's like, I've hit pause on all the campaign ad spend. He goes, if you can fix this for me, I will unblock the spend. And I was like, all right. So got in a room. I took one of my, I was managing a small team, so I took in one of my technical solutions engineers. They were on board too. We're like, yep, we're gonna do this. Like, it's fine. We customized some code to put on their page because other tags were interfering with the JavaScript execution. That was the core problem. So we made some manual adjustments to the JavaScript tag code to get it to work, and we unblocked that spend. That's how we materially touched that campaign. Now, the other thing is, I would have to do a lot of test purchases at Telepart to make sure our conversion tag was working so we could see people transacting and buying stuff because we took a revenue share at the time. So my thing, I had to do tons of test purchases. We'd always try to keep it around $20, but we had a shelf of stuff in the office with all the test purchase stuff from our various retailers. I will say this, we had to buy some stuff on the Trump store. I still, to this day, get mail from the Trump campaign, from the Republican Party, and it will never go away. I can unsubscribe or whatever, it still comes. I know I'm on that list forever, but it is what it is. I kind of chuckle to myself because it's like, oh yeah, that's right, 2016, that's how they got my name. Darn it. But that was the 2016 thing. Pass back to Liz.
Yeah, awesome.